Easy beginner drawing tips that everybody could use. If you are new to drawing, this is perfect for you, and if you even have just a little bit of experience, this is even better for you. Drawing light to dark, and what I mean by this is drawing with light pressure and then starting to use heavier pressure, as well as drawing light colors first and then building up your layers using darker colors. Both of those methods work really well to help to blend a lot easier, as well as build up those layers so that you can still see each one of those layers, and it helps you to better see proportionally where you're supposed to apply heavier pressure or lighter pressure. And here is a quick example that you can see the steps of using light colors and light pressure to using heavier pressure and darker colors. Avoiding highlights to last is probably the most important thing to remember. With colored pencils, you cannot really add white on top of dark and expect it to be completely white. So instead, what you do is avoid the highlights until closer to last. You can use a little bit of a lighter color. Easy beginner drawing tips that everybody could use. If you are new to drawing, this is perfect for you, and if you even have just a little bit of experience, this is even a little bit more and just blended really well with that warm gray color pencil. You can also use lighter colors to help to burnish and blend between the highlights and the lowlights. You can also use a little bit of a darker color just to emphasize in the lowlights after you've already drawn all of those lighter colors. You can also use a slice tool to etch in a little bit more details, which helps to emphasize the highlights a little bit more. Keep in mind that for this trick, you do have to make sure you build up enough layers for it to etch away perfectly. Once that's complete, you can use a lighter color just to blend it a little bit more if it needs to be smoothed out. Don't be afraid to play around with different colors. You can use all sorts of different colors in your portrait, ones that you wouldn't even think of, such as purples or pinks, all of those crazy looking colors that you see in the palette. Use them, play with them, see what comes out, because it really does make a big difference when you have a larger variety of colors. As an example here, I actually am using a purple gray color just to really tone down that warm color that I applied earlier. It just really helps to make it look a little bit more even, more natural looking as well. And then applying a little bit more of a pinkish skin tone color. Then once you're all done with that, you can also burnish by applying a lighter color on top of that to blend it all together. Be aware that some colors are more vibrant than others, so when applying different colors, just use a light pressure to begin with to see how it actually applies to the paper. You can also use a little test strip of paper and apply the colors there just to see how it's going to come off first before you apply it to your portrait. I went into depth about the cool and warm tones in another video, which I will link below, but this is super important for a beginner because when you're applying cool tones, which is like blues, purples, greens, it is super important to apply those to warm tones such as reds, orange, and yellows, because what that does is it actually creates a very healthy balance between the two, which makes your portrait look even more alive or more 3D like. As you can see here, I'm using a little bit of blue. I really like to use blues in the highlighted areas. It really just gives a nice reflective tone. Go check out the last video I made on this. It gives you even more examples. But here is a super quick example as to applying warm tones and cool tones together to create a more realistic look on this ear. I use a lot of warm grays and then blend it in with a little bit of some cool tones such as the purples and a little bit of even an earthy green color, which is called raw umber in the Caran d'Ache Luminance series. All of these colors are super important, especially for drawing blonde fur. So I do highly suggest checking out that video just to see other examples of what I mean by using the cool and warm tones. I used to think that I had to always have my pencil sharp, but actually that's not true. Look here, I'm actually using a Doar pencil just to create this first layer and get it all applied down, but not having to use a whole lot of detail. When applying sharper pencils, I use that more for the details, and then duller pencils for the layers that are underneath. I've noticed that not having to sharpen my pencil nearly as much does save me on time and money. Here is a quick example as to using dull pencils and then bringing out the sharper pencils for more of the detailed furs that you can see here. And yes, I am still using the same colors as I build up the layers, but you could see a pretty big difference between using a duller pencil and a sharper pencil. And once again, if you need a little bit more emphasized pieces of fur, you can use the slice tool. Now that we've gone through all the tips and tricks, here is an example as to applying all of these tips and tricks together. So using a sharp pencil, I'm able to create nice long pieces of fur, and also using cool and warm tones to create a little bit more of a good sense of depth. Using this a little bit more of a darker blue just to add a good contrast here. And then I do draw light to dark, of course. You want to use lighter pressure as well, just to make sure that you're not ruining the layers underneath, so you still get a little bit of a good blend. So using a dull pencil here, I'm also blending in some of the highlighted areas. Definitely don't have to have a sharper pencil for that. Now, of course, you can see here I did avoid the highlights in some areas. That way I can go back over with lighter pencils. You can also use a white color pencil to blend a little bit better from the highlights to the midtones. And for the rest, of course, use a variety of colors. I use greens, I use yellows, I use pinks, purples, pretty much every single color you can imagine I actually used inside this portrait, but it all just varies depending on the type of color, whether it's a more lighter color, darker, a little bit more on the gray side. But I also use some in lighter or heavier pressure just to apply it in this very specific way. I really hope that this video was helpful. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Go check out the links below if you want to learn to draw your own pet. Learn to draw your own pet. This is an 8-week program where you get to learn to draw all sorts of different animal fur, such as different types of curly fur, straight fur, different colored fur as well, such as brown or black, and different animal features, as well as towards the end, you'll get to follow along a full pet portrait tutorial so that the very end, you will get to draw your own pet with confidence. Sign up today to be put on the waitlist.